Welcome to the Yaoi Shelf.
I really hope that didn't make it.
It didn't.
Thank God. Hello. Hi.
The Yaoi Shelf. Grab a seat and relax. Your co-hosts, both your hosts, are being unhinged before recording because yesterday, when we were recording our Patreon episode, we both looked and sounded like death warmed over.
Yeah. And now we're kind of doing okay. So we're back in our unhinged moods.
Yeah, which is perfect because Carola, what are we talking about today?
Happy birthday, Amanda. We are talking about Hetalia as per your wishes.
You know, really, this is a birthday present to the both of us.
Really? Is it?
I don't like your tone, ma'am. I don't like your tone, Missy.
Don't pretend like you haven't been present for our private chats lately, where I have just been crying as you have been steadily unloading more unhinged Hetalia lore onto my shoulders. My unsuspecting, innocent shoulders.
I have never been more. I have donned the garb. I've donned traditional garb.
If you are listener only, you are not seeing the traditional garb, the national costume that is Amanda's Hetalia shirt.
I have another one that has Italy in a swimsuit and says "Make pasta, not war."
I love that.
But hello, welcome. We are talking about Access Powers Hetalia and its spinoffs. We are on Patreon, which is very important because this episode's about to get what?
Demonetized. We are not the TikTok generation. We are not about to be censoring our words, and there's going to be a lot of words in this episode that I think that YouTube isn't gonna like.
Correct. And it's all true.
Yeah, content warning for this episode, which, I mean, Nazism for one. I'm not laughing. It's not funny. It's just.
It's not. It's. I feel like we talked about this yesterday when we recorded Patreon, and Patreon comes out in a couple of weeks. I decided to have a life this summer, so
I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. But I think we were talking about this yesterday that like increasingly Hetalia just feels like a fever dream.
I mean, like, genuinely.
But like if someone said like, "Oh, this wasn't real. This was just like a shared delusion that you guys all had like 20 years ago," I'd be like, "Yeah, that checks."
It's like, you know, when they talk about all of those mass hysteria things that happened in the early 1900s, that. It's like the early 2000s and everyone was obsessed with Hetalia, but it didn't actually exist.
Yeah, if someone fully said like this was our dancing plague, I'd be like, yeah, sure.
Sure. Okay.
This is a fever dream. Yeah.
And I didn't even go there. I was in the periphery, and I have learned things over the past month that honestly,
I'm so excited.
I'm sure you are.
I'm thrilled because this is our birthday month episode. If you would like to support us, there are plenty of ways you can do so. You can head over to patreon.com where there's plenty of exclusive episodes and behind the scenes looks. Also, you can buy merch. I am working on new designs because I finally have executive function again.
Woo!
Someone blessed me with executive function.
It's a rare animal.
I was trying to explain executive dysfunction to my like boomer Southern black auntie, and she was not well. Not well. She's just like, "But why?" It's like, "Because I can't." Have you tried harder?
That's the problem, I think. That's part of the problem.
Oh my god. So as mentioned, we're talking about Hetalia. This is our birthday celebration. But this is mostly my birthday celebration.
Yes. And I'm just here.
Yes.
This episode is going to be largely carried by Amanda, who actually was there and had a lot of these experiences, while I am going to be listening in shock.
Horrified.
Yeah. 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 I am the substitute for the listener who might not be familiar with this phenomenon.
Do 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 do.
Though I did
Yeah.
read some academia on it, because of
Yes.
course I did. And there was
And
one article that was very good, which I might try to
yes.
quote. I have it open. I just have to remember
Yes.
to look at it.
And I prayed to my France shrine above my bedroom wall that sits above my diploma in my novena candle of Anthony Bourdain.
What? Why are you
What?
looking at me like that?
What are you? Why are you looking at me like
I
that?
don't know. I'm just pretending I understood all of those words, you know?
I have a shrine to France
Of course you do.
with a replica key of a very, very special building. Which, speaking of, you want to talk about long cons? Carola, what is today?
I don't know. Oh, no! It's the. Is it. Oh my god. It's today the non binary. What do you call it? What? Day of awareness? Or
I
was
wish
that
it
yes?
was, but no.
No. Because, time things. Time.
Hold on. Let me
Hang on.
check. Hold on. I'm checking. It that is today, but
Yeah,
that's
that's.
not the long con I was talking about.
Oh,
Are you
okay.
ready? Are you
Yes.
ready? Okay. Today is Bastille Day,
Yes, of
which is
course
also
it is!
Francis Bonifoy's birthday.
Did you plan this?
Yes.
Oh my god. I don't know what date it is because I am in organizer hell and I don't know what's going on anymore.
Happy
Uh,
birthday,
Happy
Francis
birthday,
Bonifoy.
France. And just again, let me just double check because I just want to get this right.
It is International Non-Binary People's Day.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to all our NB listeners for fucking that up, but it's confusing because I've seen multiple posts over the course of the week and I don't know what day it is.
So shout out to our non-binary listeners. But yes, this was the long con that I've been planning for weeks.
Oh my god.
I don't know why you're shocked.
I don't know why I'm shocked. I
I don't
mean,
know why you're
no, but
shocked.
I'm not shocked. I'm just, I've just not been paying attention to what day or date it is, and therefore I am excused.
I've been paying attention.
Of course you have.
So I started a teeth whitening journey, and my smile looks extra white, which only
Oh,
adds to the menace of my smile.
with the purple lipstick.
I know it's great, isn't it? So, for those of you who are not around or not in the fandom, or looked at the fandom and saw it like the Goya painting and were like, I don't want to be around that. Which, fair.
It's. I just want to
Yes.
say, like,
Yes.
when I was introduced to it, it was
Yes.
still very, very new. And I think if you
Yes.
got into it when it was very, very new, you had no, like, there was no way you could imagine what was to come. I think it's very, for some of those things, but I think it's very difficult for people today to, like, to look at the Hetalia fandom and be like, I want some of that. Because,
We're going to put a pin in that because one thing I will say, this fandom, like many fandoms, we have been having these conversations for a while. These conversations are not new. We have been denouncing these negative actions since they started happening. But the way modern kids tell the story is that we were all just totally fine with it. None of us cared. We were all just, sitting there with our dumb weeb juice, just sipping along and watching atrocities happen. And that's not true. Um, but for those of you who did not know, Hetalia is a webcomic started by Hidekazu Himaruya. Well,
yeah.
yes. When he was, and it started when he was in New York. He had spent some time in the U.S. And he didn't like it very much. Like, let's just be honest, he didn't enjoy it very much. Um, This literally started as a racist joke between him and a bunch of his expat friends.
What is the source for that? Because I genuinely cannot find anything on the origins. Like I can just find he went to, I've now forgotten the name of the university. He went to
Mhm.
some university or like some school in New York, and it started out as a web comic that was just
Mhm.
literally on his little GeoCities
Yes.
website, and that is all I can find. I can find nothing about the origins of Hetalia, like zero.
That's about as close to the origins as you're going to get. Because he also did a good amount of that drawing just like off the cuff. Because really it started with him and a bunch of his expat friends. It started with him and a bunch of his friends who were all looking at all these different cultures and having the same stereotypical thoughts, especially coming from the Japanese perspective. And then it got popular because of art style, and when you tone down some of the overt racism, it's quite charming. When you make it just about broad stereotypes, it's quite charming.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean, yeah. I What the hell just happened? Okay,
what happened, Corolla?
no, it was just my tabs. I was just trying to get the outline next to us on the screen here.
We are professional podcasters. We've been doing this
I
for years.
know exactly what I'm doing. I'm not professional enough to be one of those people with multiple screens.
I have multiple
So
screens.
I don't. I have a laptop,
Oh,
and
so Hetalia became the main series that we know it as, Axis Powers Hetalia, with a anime that started in the 2010s, early 2010s, more like your 2009s.
yeah.
We got a manga around the same time that was centered around Axis Powers Italia, but the original four coma you could still find. I don't think you can find the original four coma very easily nowadays, just because it would not pass anyone's tests for anything.
But I think I was reading because Himanoya is also the creator of. I have now completely forgotten what that series is. It's Chibi something. Let me double check that before I lie to you. Uh, but I mean, I mean, I can talk while I look it up because he apparently uses
Yes,
like the original was on a GeoCities website. I mean, you
correct.
remember GeoCities,
Of course.
but Chibi-san Datte
Mm-hmm.
is the new series, which I think is quite well known now.
It is.
Yeah, but I think he had a website called um, not Caprio and Italia. No, that was a different thing. Uh, what the hell? Oh, he went to Parsons. Parsons School of Design was the school. I have this. I have a tab open so I can pretend like I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, he still has a blog. He still has a blog where he still posts a lot of things, and one of the
Yes.
sites that he does use, which I can't find right now, but it was something like 10 something, was is still in use
Yes.
apparently. But I'm
Yes.
but that doesn't necessarily mean that all of the oldest stuff is available on
Yes.
there.
Yes. There is a note in here that Corolla put in about the name. I'm going to let her read that because it was very, very funny that she included it. Like I somehow was going to forget.
No, but it wasn't there, and I thought put it in
Go
there.
ahead.
It needs to look like I also contributed to this episode, Amanda, because I don't know anything. Okay, so so the series gets its name because the main character, who we're kind of experiencing things through the eyes of, God help us all, is North Italy,
Mm-hmm.
and of course in Italian, Italy is Italia, and
Mm-hmm.
Hetalia is comprised of the word Italia and the Japanese hetare, which means wimpy or cowardly or useless. And
Mm-hmm.
famously, Italian troops have been known to be not the bravest in battle necessarily, and it draws strongly on that stereotype and on the legends
Yes.
of the Italian soldiers back in the day.
Yes. I think useless is the term that most fans used, because especially Northern Italy was just trying his best. He sucked at everything.
He's very cute though.
He has a hotter brother.
Yes, absolutely. We will
We talked
get
about that
into that.
yesterday.
Oh, we talked about him yesterday.
He has a hotter brother. Uh,
Woman, oh my love.
the series originally centers around some very basic stereotypes of countries personified, and the main series as we know it, Axis Powers, explicitly is set during World War II and focuses on the Axis powers, Japan, Northern Italy, and Germany. Now, you might hear that and think that could lead to some problems.
Hmm.
You are correct.
I don't think there is a world where you would not be correct. I remember, like, again, I have two very vivid, like, first memories of being introduced to Hetalia
Mm-hmm.
because, again, I was forcibly introduced to this by a friend who was younger than me who was talking
Mm-hmm.
about it. I didn't know what it was, and she literally, I don't even think the anime had started yet. She literally sat me down in front of like scanlations of the manga and
Mm-hmm.
told me to read it while she was sitting right there. And I had no idea what I was looking at. Like, that was my first meeting with it. And then, as I was trying to wrap my head around this, I am
Mm-hmm.
looking at the whole Italy and Germany thing. And I'm like, am I just supposed to pretend like this isn't what it is?
Yes.
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 And yeah,
That's
those
exactly
were
what you're
my
supposed to do.
it's a lot more complex and again I did read that very good article. I will put it in the Discord because it was very good.
Yes.
um but yeah, it we talk about media literacy a lot, and there are some layers that you'll need in order to, I think,
Survive.
survive and just kind of
Survive.
like to separate and look through the layers of
Yes.
Italia, because at first glance, mm,
Well, and I think that's why it's so important to put all those levels of framing on that this is one Japanese man's perspective that is influenced a lot by his own xenophobia and his own, frankly, racism. There's a reason why a lot of these characters look a certain way. There's a reason a lot of these characters sound a certain way. There's a reason why a lot of these characters in countries that are ignored happen to be brown.
yeah, I
There
did
are
put it.
entire continents that are not discussed,
Yeah, I did
almost like
put a note
yes,
in that
yeah.
actually.
There are entire continents that are not discussed, almost like that's part of the problem.
Hmm.
Mm.
Hmm.
So, with that in mind, we've barely scratched the surface, but I'm sure that you're thinking, hey, this sounds kind of problematic. Why did anyone like this to start with? Because I feel like that's the modern interpretation is like there's no redeeming qualities at all. It's
Hmm.
just racist, it's just gross. Why did anyone like this? And from someone who was there,
Yes.
you have to understand that one, it was the 2010s.
Yes.
The world was very different.
It was very different.
The social internet was in its infancy, so this was one of the first series that I remember being like truly mimetic. We would react with Hetalia gifs. We had a gif for everything. There were memes, there were scans that were shared, there was fan works, there was cosplay, there was everything, and we could all get together socially.
Yeah, and there were literal people, young and older, disturbingly adult people, running around just with vacant expressions on their faces, going pasta. At least over here,
Yes.
that
Uh,
happened.
and with such a diverse cast and a pretty large, it's not diverse, it's diverse. Um, and large cast, there was truly something for everyone. It was very character focused, and each character, because they are countries, has extensive lore and personal
Yeah.
relationships. And that was especially cool because you did not necessarily have to be your country. A
Mm.
lot of Americans were not America. I was France.
Of course you were.
Shut.
with a twist of Austria.
I yes. I think I'm a bit more of a France than an Austria, but I did love being Austria as well.
I
Oh,
mean, yeah, yeah, no. I will say what did push me into it eventually
mhm.
was when the Nordics were introduced, because I was like,
Yes.
fucking, finally we have some representation. Not,
Yes.
yeah. So I personally really love Norway,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, but and I think that I did put this as a note further down, but I will bring it up
Mhm.
here because
Mhm.
it actually fits better here because
Mhm.
Hidekazu himself, like the way that Japan is portrayed, isn't, it isn't particularly nationalistic. Like Japan is often also the butt of a lot of the jokes. So it's like
He is.
everyone is being lovingly bullied at best. It's like, so just because, just because your country was there, and I mean this, we talked about this in the Patreon episode, like this gives
Mhm.
room to so much fan work because everyone has a stake in this, right? Because
Absolutely.
everyone can relate to and shape the narrative in fanon of a character, because we all,
Absolutely.
obviously everyone knows their own culture better than this Japanese dude drawing this webcomic. So,
Yes.
but that doesn't mean, like you say, that everyone's favorite character was their own country.
Absolutely. And I think, Hetalia really struck with a very certain subsect of deeply neurodivergent and chronically online individuals. Raise his hand. Most of us were history buffs.
Yep.
Most of us were already anime fans and have been anime fans for a while. So giving us something like this that was hit hard with the Bishonen beam, that was all the things that make anime anime, with
Yeah.
great music, with adorable designs, with quick timing and jokes. And then you add just enough history to be close enough to accurate. I completely understand why this took
Yeah.
off.
And
There
then
is
of
no
course
part of me that's shocked.
it's bite-sized as well, because
It's tiny.
the young comma format is
Mm-hmm.
made for comedy. It's made for quick gags,
Yes.
and the anime is like 5-minute episodes. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very digestible. It's very, like, you don't need to set up a lot of time to watch it.
No.
It's like you can watch the whole season, the whole first season in like an hour, because it's
Yep.
so short. I don't
Yeah.
recommend it because your brain might,
Out of your
melt.
ears. Yeah. Yeah. And you'll pick up all the vocal tics, which there are several.
Yeah, you won't be the same, but you
You won't be.
can do it. It is a
You,
very, like,
we're not
it's,
there yet.
yeah,
It's also, I love that you put this note in here, and we'll talk about this. It is very fan work friendly.
yeah,
It is I have not seen the series that was almost more designed for fan work than Hetalia.
yeah. And when I was rooting around the internet, trying
Mm-hmm.
to read up on this, because obviously this is not my niche. I don't know a lot about this. But I was reading up about it, and Hidekaz was incredibly, like, positive to fan works, and still is.
Yes.
Like, not only did he approve of it, he actively
Yes.
encouraged fans to create their own works, to share fan videos, to make their
Yes.
own characters and original takes of, provinces and,
Yes.
unions, and so, giving a lot of room to the fans, and there will always be gender bends, and he was out there like, I am terrible with names, so name the gender bends whatever you see fit. Very, like, the creator very much playing the ball over to the fans and being
Yeah.
like, as long as you're not, like, profiting off of this, like, go wild.
Yeah. He accepted a lot of renames of characters, because there's a
Mm.
lot of characters that, even though they have canon names, they have fanon versions of the names that are more popular. France is one of them, because his name is Francis, which is the English word for France. If you just add an O, then it's the French word for French.
Mm.
So he becomes Francois in a lot of fan works, which is, again, it's a tiny change, but that's what fans do.
Yeah.
I have not seen a show. Yes.
I think I also read a note somewhere that he would also be like, if he got like feedback, which is interesting considering some of the subject matter, but that he would get feedback that fans didn't really vibe with the name, or like doesn't really, the fans didn't really accept the name, and he would allow the change, just
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
oh
he did that with
yeah.
Finland. Um, like he's done that a few times, but yeah, Hetalia produced a ton of fan works, a ton of
Mm.
cosplay, a ton of games, a ton of just role play and fanfic. There was so much effort that fans put into this series because the bones of it are actually quite spare. Like it's a 5-minute episode.
Yeah.
There's really not that much there, but there is extensive history and
Mm.
cultural understanding that fans, again, this really attracted. Talk about a series that found its people. That he found all the history nerds that were
Yeah.
just sitting there waiting, and they could go after it, and that's what happened. This series was big even before Yuri on Ice. This was one of the first series I remember having as much contemporaneous merch as possible. Like, this is a shirt from Hot Topic. I didn't have to go out and hunt for this like a hunter gatherer. This is from Hot Topic.
Yeah. I mean, even now, I mean, not that that is surprising in that sense, but when I was in Tokyo last time in 2020, right before the pandemic, we were at one of the K books that sell a lot of like merch, like small trinkets and charms and keychains and things in Ikebukuro. And there was a surprising amount of Hetalia merch still, and it was all fan made. Like it was all secondhand fan made goods. And there was this one Norway charm, and I wanted it so bad, but it was like 1,500 yen, and I was like, I cannot defend spending 1,500 yen on this tiny charm from a franchise I don't really follow, and I regret it. He was very cute.
There was a ton of official merch too that was coming from Japan. One of my favorites, and I hate that I lost this piece, was they had these wallets that were passport books.
Oh my god.
I hate that I didn't keep it, but I had a France one. But yeah, like there was a lot of merch that came over. So after listening to us talk about this series about personified countries, you may be thinking, well, wait, this premise doesn't feel very original. You are correct. One of the big conversations Hetalia fans were having during that time is that this is not an original premise. Carola, what are you doing?
I am just Googling. Hang on.
What are you Googling?
I will let you finish that sentence, and then I'll tell you what I'm Googling.
You are correct, because before Hetalia was a thought in Hidekazu's mind, there was other series like Scandinavia and the World by Human, which we've also talked about. I quite like Scandinavia and the World, but it pales in comparison to Hetalia. One, because a lot of the references are a lot more culturally specific, and if you don't understand that culture very well, i.e. Americans, a lot of those jokes go over your head. And it lacks the Bishonen quality.
I'm just trying to find out.
What are you doing?
I'm just trying to find out when Scandinavia and the World was created.
A long time ago.
I know, but I just want to know when did Scandinavia begin? And Google asks. That's not.
And around the same time, there was another comic called Afghanistan, which was about the eponymous personified version of the country Afghanistan. It was another
and her neighbors.
And her neighbors, in which the Taliban was represented by an angry cat that would bully Afghanistan.
You know, we talked about this in our private chat, and when you read about the manga Afghanistan, then it looks very cute, like, and it sounds very enjoyable. But then you get to the part about the cat, the Taliban cat, and you're just like, I don't know if I want to interact with this. Like, there are things that this makes me uncomfortable.
So
I don't.
I read a decent amount of Afghanistan while I was reading Hetalia. And yeah, it kind of does hit you all at once, or it's like, this is not the same. This is not a one-to-one comparison of an angry cat bullying a little girl. This is not.
Yeah.
These things aren't equal. But that was one of the major crises that Hetalia faced, was that this was not original anymore. And I think, again, I mentioned the Bishonen quality. Hetalia had a wide variety of assorted twinks for you to enjoy, something that Humon has resisted doing because that's just not their style.
Which is fair, but personally, I think everything gets better with a little bit of
Assorted
twink.
twinks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think also you're reading the two for different reasons. Like, I read Scandinavia in the world because I do know a little bit more about world culture, and I almost married a Dane. So what?
Triggered.
Carola, I could have been your Danish neighbor.
I don't.
What was that? What was that judgment?
Danish neighbor. I mean, I've never.
I could.
I was going to say I've never been to Denmark. I have. I've landed at the airport in Copenhagen on my way to and from Japan. That is the closest I've come to vacationing in Denmark. Even though I'm Norwegian and everyone goes to Denmark, we never did. Thank God, because I don't understand their language. No offense, Danes. I just.
But you're reading the two comics for different reasons. And I think one thing that a lot of modern fans understand is that, like, we didn't, this wasn't Black Butler. We didn't sell our soul to Hetalia. We were allowed to read other things. So, like, I did both. I read Scandinavia in the World and Hetalia.
Yeah. And then later you would get things like, is it Sweden Ball?
I think so.
I think it's called Sweden Ball. I forget who's supposed to be the main character. I think that is also very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, it's myopic to think that, we all just sold our soul to Japan and was like, Hetalia forever. And while there were fans that were showing their whole ass by yelling at Humon and being like, you stole Hetalia as an idea. And it's like, I literally did this first.
Yeah, that was...
And in some ways better.
Yeah, it was a time, for sure.
Yeah, I'm not going to deny that those fans weren't there, because they were.
Oh, they were.
They were. But, again, it's generalizing that a lot of us didn't like both. Because, again, a majority of us were genuinely history and culture fans. More content of the thing we like. You keep enjoying it. So, now that we've talked a little bit about it, you might say, so okay, all of this sounds a little bit problematic. This is one of those rare instances where you are correct and neither of us have much to say about it. Yes.
No, go on. I'm
processing.
Yes.
You would be correct. One of the biggest issues is that this is a Japanese perspective on World War II. So literally in the narrative, Japan is just trying to make friends, so he joins the Axis parties. None of the countries are really independent and have bosses. So Germany, who is incredibly Aryan looking and has dogs named after Hitler's dogs.
I forgot about the dogs.
Yeah, he has 2 dogs named after Hitler's dogs. Isn't happy with his boss, who in main series is very much Hitler. But he does what he's told, like a good German soldier.
Yes.
Italy, who was one of the first countries to make fascism their entire personality, is played as a dumb airhead who is just sweet and cute and doing his best. Japan is mostly seen as just following his friends into the fascism fandango.
Yes. There is a note somewhere that I have seen referenced multiple times during my research
Yes.
hours, which is that everyone knows that Japan is big on trends. Like, and of course, when we think about
Hmm.
the modern days, you know
Hmm.
how Japan jumps on a lot of trends and Japan creates a
Hmm.
lot of trends. And
Hmm.
and and Hideka's had a comment on that about how Japan is easily influenced.
Yes.
And yeah, and that is definitely the idea that you get. Not
That
only
is,
in the sense of
yes.
him joining the Axis powers, but multiple things that happen in the series are just Japan getting swayed.
Yes. In one of Japan's character songs, "Excuse Me, I Am Sorry," there's a line in here saying, "My black hair will be turning blonde soon."
Mm,
So like there's that big reference, like he's just trying his best. He's doing his best. He is trying to make friends. And I see that you put in here that this is not a national, that Japan is not portrayed as heroic or particularly admirable, and that he does not escape mockery. I'm not going to give him that much credit. While that is true, that does not excuse that this is one very particular take, and it's not a good one.
no, but it's like I'm trying to. It is very hard to scroll through an academic paper uh, when I do not have the software to highlight things on my computer because I have free PDF reading software. But yeah, the article I was reading, the uh let's see, it is called Belittling Japanese Nationalism in Hetalia Axis Powers by Theodore Alexander Sands.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting how it grapples with these portrayals and compares it to some very much very much more racist and nationalistic uh,
Mm-hmm.
comics and manga that particularly portray the relationship between Japan and Korea. And but he's pointing out how there is no, like, everyone kind of technically is an other, and there is not one specific like other in the series, and like everyone is portrayed through a stereotype. Everyone's history is condensed
Mm-hmm.
in like a cute and funny way because it's a gag manga. It's not meant to be a historical takeaway, though it
Yeah, it's
might
meant
it
to
might
be.
definitely pique your interest in certain historical aspects, but like you
Mm-hmm.
would not use Hetalia, I hope, as like your primary source to learn about World War II or the Axis powers or
Please don't.
anything. But
Yes.
yeah, but it's a very interesting read because it offers a perspective on how Japan isn't the hero. Japan isn't even the main character, and all the characters are getting their turn being kind of ridiculed in various ways.
I think yes and no. I think especially like where that rings a little bit false to me is the relationship between Japan and China,
Mm.
where China is said that his boss is basically the dragon from Dragon Ball Z, and he carries around a shitty knockoff of Hello Kitty.
Oh yeah.
So like, so I get what they're saying in that, but it's like there are other ways that Japan exudes its aura in this series
Mm.
without making the literal character being the bad guy. Like
Yeah, but
there's
it's
a lot. Yes.
no. I was just thinking about the relationship between China and Japan because what's also interesting there is that we know that Japan and China have a history, and Japan has been imperialistic and horrible. But in Hetalia, China finds Japan in like a jungle and like raises
Yes.
him
Yes.
and gives him letters because
Yes.
Japan is illiterate, and then gets really angry because Japan then goes on to make
Changes
his
them
own
up. Yeah.
alphabet. Yeah. But I think it's interesting that Japan is kind of like the adopted child, quote unquote, of
Yes.
China in that sense, because rather than portraying Japan as like, oh, I conquered at least parts of you, that it's very. I
Well, and
think that's
that's,
interesting.
but I mean that's part of the issue is that it's infantilizing Japan.
Hmm.
and making it sound like. So one thing I say a lot, like flippantly, but I also mean it, is I would love to know what Japan did to make us forget all those war crimes.
Well, first of all, they made themselves forget a lot of the war crimes by
Yeah.
just not teaching them. I mean, that's
Yes.
the easy way of doing it.
Yes. But that's the thing that I'm always struck by, is that by infantilizing a lot of these countries, it removes agency, which to me is almost worse than
Mm.
if Japan was just Japanese America. I would almost be able to tolerate that a little bit easier than this horrible infantilization of Japan. It's just like, oh, I'm just trying to make friends, and I'm lonely over here, and oh, I really didn't do anything bad.
Mm.
Like, I, at least for me, I digest that much worse.
Yeah, but I can see where you're coming from because it's
Yeah.
kind of like, when you're discussing, I mean, when we do discuss real life events, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like look at how Germany are handling their history and World
Mm-hmm.
War II, and how
Mm-hmm.
Germans are actively being taught what their role was, how
Mm-hmm.
because if we don't teach that, then it is inevitably going to happen again. And
Exactly.
so, if you just kind of brush off that responsibility and go, well, we didn't do anything wrong, then
Mm-hmm.
obviously that's going to be a problem. So I absolutely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big reasons why, like, looking back, Hetalia really didn't age well.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I genuinely think that is one of the reasons why I could never really get into it, because
Mm-hmm.
it just didn't sit right with me how, like, at the time when I was introduced to it. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
definitely have enjoyed parts of it. Like, if you listen to
Mm-hmm.
the Patreon episode, I have soft
Yes.
spot for certain characters, but it's just I just, as a
Mm-hmm.
World War II nerd who has read and watched all the documentaries, and it's so hard to kind of put that aside and just to
Mm-hmm.
enjoy the flippant humor. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it is in many ways like, the art is so cute,
Mm-hmm.
it has so many like appealing qualities, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so hard sometimes to reconcile that with the reality of the history. And I think that a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
things that are more easily digestible are the things that you don't necessarily know a lot about. So
Exactly.
say that you are in Europe and you don't know the extensive history of Japan and its relations to other Asian countries.
Mm-hmm.
That is a lot more digestible to you because
Exactly.
you don't have
Well,
the cultural context.
and especially for, I, again, speaking as an American, but like the culturally abandoned weeb in America who like has given their soul away and doesn't claim the U.S. Me over here with my France shrine. Uh, it's a lot easier to digest this stuff and to process it, because yeah, if you don't know that history, it's easy to take that, and that's where like that media criticism, that media literacy part comes in, because yeah,
Mm,
if you don't know this stuff, you're going to take this at face value, and there absolutely were fans that did. What
yeah.
was more dangerous were the fans that did know and used this to prop up their own nonsense.
Mm.
Speaking of, several characters are drawn in Nazi uniforms. Just
Letting that sink in. Yeah.
so when you're cosplaying them, please be careful.
Yeah. We
Um,
will definitely come back to that, but but yeah, no, it is so, as an organizer,
yes.
we've had, you sometimes need to sit down and like
Mm-hmm.
you're creating the rules of conduct, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there are specific fandoms where you have to, okay,
Yep.
how do we handle this? Like, how do we,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't ban an entire fandom. You can't say no one
No.
gets to cosplay from this fandom, but then you have to be like, okay, but you don't get to wear anything emblematic. Like, you can,
Right.
like, I think a lot of organizers probably take that approach that, yeah, sure, you can wear that uniform, but you don't get to have the regalia. You don't get to have the patches. Like, that's not It is very difficult. It is because it's like,
Just old fan PTSD.
yeah, and I have heard stories, of people. And I mean, we are living in a world where who was that cosplayer? It was a Has Been Hotel cosplayer, wasn't it? Who was literally assaulted not too long ago for, I think it was Has Been, unless it was Hell of a Boss. It was one of those. Was someone cosplaying a character at a con and literally getting physically assaulted because the person thinks the character is problematic, so they attacked the person.
Okay,
Which,
but
don't
also
do that.
we've had has been cosplayers literally in blackface.
Have we? I mean, I'm not
We have
surprised. I just
we had se-
I have not actually seen this play out. This one is,
we have had several Alistairs in blackface.
but I fail to see why would you.
We don't have time to talk about this
No,
today.
no, but I think I was trying to get at something. But like,
You were.
I've heard about people like cosplaying, and not even like, not necessarily like Germany or Prussia, but just that military uniforms to a lot
Mhm.
of people are just so, in lack of better words, like triggering. Like, they're just
They
so,
are.
that cosplayers from Hetalia who have not necessarily cosplayed those specific characters have been targeted with harassment by passerbys who just assume they are Nazis.
Okay, but I also think you have to understand the optics of looking at that. And like I've admitted this for me as a cosplayer and as a con goer, that if I see too many Jokers in a room, Joker from Batman, I get anxious. I get physically anxious because I know the persona of that guy and he's been doing some shit.
Yeah, no, but I
So
understand,
like
because it's a complex
it's a
issue.
very complicated issue. And I think for me, and I mentioned this in Patreon, but it's something worth saying in here. I love Prussia. I would never cosplay him. I love Prussia. I think he's hilarious. He is not worth any of the energy put into finding alt costumes because his most iconic is Waffen SS.
Yeah, and it's like what I also said in response to that yesterday, that I also think that a lot of people, like, Prussia kind of ends up for a lot of people in like this kind of, like, this liminal space, because you don't think of Prussia when you think of World War II. You think of Germany. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily know about Prussia. You know what I mean? Like that. I feel like that uniform that he is wearing is less emblematic. Like, again, not making any excuses here. I'm just saying that I think that a lot of ignorance also goes into it.
I think you're giving. I hear where you're coming from, but I also live in Texas.
Yeah,
I live very close to the German parts of Texas.
the fact that there's a German part of Texas is just.
There's multiple German parts of Texas. The modern, like, neo-Nazi party started in Texas
Jesus Christ.
because of internment camps. So I get where you're coming from, but I don't think that you're giving these fans enough credit. Especially considering Hitalia's known attachment to fans of history. We know what Prussia is.
Okay, fine.
We know what German nationalism is. We know what that looks, sounds, and acts like. We wouldn't like. So, I mean, we talked about this in some of the micronations yesterday, but like, there's a reason why some of these characters aren't as popular, and there's a reason why Prussia is. People know who that is. People know what that stands for. There are people who still claim to be Prussian.
It's a dead nation.
I mean, so is the US at this point, but
Uh,
so I think I get where you're coming from, but one thing that I'm big on right now, especially, is you cannot let these fans off the hook. Because I feel like one of the big like counter arguments, like, well, we were all young and we didn't know any better. We knew better. We knew
Yeah.
better. We knew better than to dress up in Nazi uniforms in front of the Holocaust Memorial in Dallas, Texas. We
Okay,
knew better.
now you're just jumping the gun. But
We knew better. Like,
yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying as well. Like,
yeah.
I'm not making any excuses. I'm just saying, like, what I think about, and again, just pointing out that we
Mm-hmm.
learned World War II a lot in
Mm-hmm.
school. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like the two only things that they taught me between religion class and history class was
Was
World
World War
War
II.
II and Judaism.
Yes.
Like, we
Yes.
learned those two things so many times. And for some
Mm-hmm.
reason, Prussia was just like a speck. Like, I think I didn't know about Prussia for the longest
Mm-hmm.
fucking time. So I think that for some people, I mean, obviously not the hardcore history buffs, like obviously not the people
Mm-hmm.
who knew what they were doing, but like if you are just like a person who's getting swayed by the, by the fandom and by, character designs, because the Prussia as a character, he's hot. He's one of the prettiest men in this show, and he looks really pretty, and you don't know what Prussia is, but that's when you do the research. Like but I don't know. I have a very, like, I know people who have cosplayed Prussia, and
Mm-hmm.
like they are good people. But I don't.
Yeah.
But the thing is, would they do it today?
No.
Probably not. Like, I'm not
No.
going to speak for anyone, but like it's just I can't imagine it in with
Mm-hmm.
if not for not just because we are smarter, quote unquote, or more aware of
Mm-hmm.
the world around us than we were in the 2010s, but just out of fear of cancellation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, but yeah, one thing I will not do is when fans don't deserve a pass, they're not going to get one. Because sometimes fans do deserve a pass, and I get it. Like, yeah, there's a lot about Hetalia that we didn't understand, that we didn't think about, that our brains weren't fully developed, and we didn't get. This is not one of those instances. But as mentioned, we are jumping the gun. So,
Yes.
do you want to talk about Korea? Because this is something I knew about, but not this deeply.
Yeah, no, that was one of the things that caught me off guard. I fell into this rabbit hole about the character of South
Mm-hmm.
Korea, which because I vaguely remember Korea from my, ventures
Mm-hmm.
into the Hetalia fandom, but like he's not a prominent character.
He's not.
And he would go on to be even less of a prominent character, because if you look
Mm-hmm.
at just like the basics, if you look at the Wikipedia page for Hetalia and you jump to the controversy section, it is surprisingly short.
Yes.
I expected it to be,
Much larger.
yeah, but it literally doesn't deal with anything
Mm-mm.
except the Korea controversy. And again,
Yes.
famously, Korea and Japan has not a great history. Korea was colonized by Japan.
Mm-hmm.
People were forcibly removed from their
Mhm.
country and brought to Japan, and there are still Japanese Koreans who are descendants of those people today living in Japan who are second class citizens, because Japan is still extremely racist towards Korea while also enjoying their pop culture. It is
Yeah.
complicated, and it is incredibly messy. So naturally, when a stereotypical gag character who's supposed to represent this country appears, there's going to be a problem. So the
Yes.
South Korean character was constantly being portrayed, like, this is in broad strokes, because again, I'm not a connoisseur here, but he's in broad strokes portrayed as hating Japan, yet
Yes.
copying him and claiming that, oh, we also have this, and we made this, and our cars are better, like we have this, he's also portrayed as groping the chests, for instance, of other characters, Japan in particular, and with Japan being kind of like not really resisting him, but also necessarily
Not liking it.
Yeah. And on top of that, he's not an adult character. He's a teen character. So South Korea is infantilized And this, I got this from that article I read, which he's apparently
Mm-hmm.
also physically othered because he doesn't look Asian. He doesn't
Yes.
have, he has a lot of characteristics that makes him look almost Caucasian, and he
Yes.
looks more like the Western characters, which is such a telling sign that Japan sees Korea as something, that
Other.
other. And so this creates a lot of backlash. What you need to know is that Korea has some of the strictest defamation laws in this
Yes.
world, and then you have that backstory. So there were Korean politicians, like actual Korean politicians, who were
Mm-hmm.
out speaking about this. There was a chairwoman for some party, some political organization, who called it a literal threat to
Mm-hmm.
Korean identity. And Korean nationals, Korean citizens created a
Mm-hmm.
petition to stop this. So basically, Korea was cut from the anime. Korea was shaved
Yes.
down as a character and removed from the
Yes.
anime because of the controversy. And
Yes.
supposedly, I don't have a lot of sources on this, but there was also an incident, supposedly, where someone took fan art of Korea being sexual with Japan to some political meeting and held it up as a poster, and it created some disruption, which,
So I remember the
yeah.
controversy of Korea not being in the anime, and I do remember some of the lawsuit stuff. But yeah, like he was a character that was somewhat in the original Four Koma, and he just stopped appearing.
Yeah.
And he became a really, really big fanon character
Hmm.
where like actual Koreans were trying to write him well and do him well. And I think I saw most of that side of like the
Yeah.
reconquista of trying to fix these characters, which is something Hetalia fans have been doing since Hetalia started, is trying to fix these characters to make them suck less. Of several countries are very stereotyped based on the literal most obvious information about these countries. Germany likes beer and working hard. Italy is lazy. Japan is polite. America's a fucking dumbass.
Norway
And
is the critic. Denmark is loud.
Norway's also a brocon.
Yes. Which
Austria's a dandy. France is a pervert.
France is Jean Baptiste, as we have established.
I don't have a type. Don't worry
No.
about it.
Mm.
And this is how you get many countries that are just not portrayed accurately or well, like Finland being an adorable twink.
I am sure there are adorable twinks in Finland. I'm not
I'm
saying.
certain there are.
But again, like I have said many times before, as the Nordic representation on this podcast, the imagery that Japan has of Finland compared to the imagery that we have of Finland,
Mhm.
very different.
Yes.
Very, very different. I think when I first saw Finland and Sweden,
Mm-hmm.
I thought that they were the other way around.
Reversed,
I thought,
yeah.
because not that Finland doesn't necessarily look like Sweden. I was trying to explain to you the concept of party svenska yesterday. The party Sweden.
You explained
which
it
is
to me.
yeah, which is how I would have imagined Sweden at the time, but.
But yeah, like you get these really, really interesting character choices, and I say interesting very loosely. Where again, like you can tell that this is written by a very certain perspective. One of my favorites in that is that on America, his glasses represent Texas.
Why?
Ask Kita Cause Carola.
I don't know. I thought maybe you knew. You are the expert.
I don't know why specifically his glass. I think it has something to do with land mass because Texas is one of the bigger states. He also has a best friend who is an alien whose name is Tony.
Oh.
And speaks in nothing but profanities based off of the Roswell landing.
Of course. But of course.
You don't know what I've seen.
No, I don't know what you've seen, and I think that I am also grateful for
You don't know what I've been through
Hmm.
in this fandom. Uh,
Today on fandom therapy on the Yaoi Shelf.
Carla brings up a great point, and that's something we talked about at the top of the show. Where are all the other non-white and non-Asian countries?
And also, maybe their general lack of appearance is for the better.
I'd give that a soft cosign. I agree that like at this stage, I wouldn't want Hideka's trying to represent like Nigeria. I,
I I mean, I'm not saying that it wouldn't necessarily that I'm, like who am I to say? Again, I don't know how many, like the only I can remember very few characters who are like non-Western, non-white, or non-Asian. Uh, there's Cuba.
who is best friends with Canada because they both like baseball.
Oh, okay. And then I remember there being a lot of debacle over Seychelles. Is that how
Lady
you say it?
Seychelles, yeah.
Seychelles? Yeah.
There was
Um,
also Egypt and Turkey,
oh, yeah.
and they aren't portrayed. Checks notes the best.
I think, yeah. No, but it's just, because Japan has an unfortunate history with blackface. I'm just going to go out and say it. To this day, it still happens on Japanese TV sometimes because they
Yes, it
just
does.
don't
They don't. They don't see
understand.
it.
They don't understand why it's not okay, and it's like, we are constantly. I'm not throwing Japan under the bus because we are constantly having this conversation in Norway because a while ago, like in the recent past, there was some school event where they were going to learn about cultures. And so the natural choice for these educators were to build an African village and paint everyone in blackface to teach the children about Africa. And then there was a huge fallout, and people are, commenting on these articles about it, being all,
Yes.
well, we don't have the same history as America, therefore we shouldn't strike down on blackface. I'm like, you are correct in one half of that. No, we don't have the same history as America. Our racism is different. Blackface is still bad. Like,
Yeah.
so it's not like the rest of the world has gotten the memo fully, but just
No.
based on how Japan has a tendency of being incredibly insensitive to these things because they don't learn about them. Let's be frank.
No.
They don't learn about them.
Yeah. There's a part
I
of me that
yeah.
like yeah is I will say I would prefer Hideka's not cover like the transatlantic slave trade.
Yeah. I
I would
feel I just no, but it's just the thought of because the thought of putting that in a gag manga. You get me? Like,
yes.
I do know that, like, yeah, sure, it's mostly about the Second World War, but
Mhm.
it's not like they're portraying the Holocaust. They are just,
Right. And
you know,
that's a huge part of it is that it is this very sanitized version of these events. And I think the problem of it is that if you're going to do that, then just don't make it about World War II where there is nothing to sanitize. I think later seasons of the series are more successful in that when it just becomes more like world commentary. I think that's a lot easier to
mm,
handle when
yeah.
it's just stereotypical jokes. But especially that first series, Axis Powers, it's really hard to get through some of it because it's like there's just nothing here to laugh about. There's nothing you can't remove this stuff and people not notice. And I think that leads us very neatly into surely the fandom wasn't problematic.
I love your first note on here.
Just maniacal laughter.
It's just all caps laughter in the document.
There have been several instances of Germany and Prussia cosplayers doing Nazi salutes outside of concentration camps. And in America, at Holocaust memorials. This has happened multiple times.
You know, let me just look at my notes for a second because they are very short. Like
away to the notes.
I had, had a time researching for this because I'd heard the stories. I mean, we've all heard the offhand comment about people getting dressed up in, these uniforms and going to places. I mean, you shouldn't be doing the Nazi salute in the first place.
Anywhere, regardless of what you're wearing.
Yeah, but you're going to a Holocaust memorial or going to the gates of Auschwitz, and then you're like, I'm going to have a cosplay photo shoot, and I'm going to be doing this. No, don't do. Like, we've all heard those offhand stories. But then I started listening to people's YouTube videos from people who were actually in the fandom at the time. And I got to hear about things like the Anime Boston incident. And I was like, why?
Well, and that's why, that's why I was so hesitant to let you kind of let those fans off the hook.
Oh no, yeah.
That's why I was so hesitant to do that, because they fucking knew. They knew. There is no ignorance that you can claim when you're dressed as Germany doing a Nazi salute in front of Auschwitz. There is no fucking, oh, they were just young and impressionable. No.
Yeah, no, I am absolutely not excusing those people. If I am excusing
you were doing.
If I'm excusing anyone, it is like you chose to cosplay Prussia, for a photo shoot in your garden because you like his character design. Like, that's kind of like, there is no excuse.
I'm trying to imagine Gilbert in a garden.
His little teacup. I don't know, but
trying to imagine
for some reason, I'm getting like images from Wonder Egg Priority, like that garden with the little table. I don't know. but yeah, no, and it's like,
is he there? Is he a cryptid in the background sneaking up on Austria?
No, he's just hanging out. He's just sitting there with his legs crossed and a teacup in his hand, having a break, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. No, but it's just like, we've talked about this before, because this specific thing has come up multiple times on this podcast, because legendary cultural and insensitivity in all the ways, but because I just can't wrap my head around it, because every time we end up talking about Auschwitz, for instance, or any other Holocaust memorial site, I'm like, I can't even imagine, it's like that scene again in the History Boys when they're talking about it, and it's like, and they're asking like, okay, but do they take photos of each other while they're there? Where do they have their lunch? Because it seems like everything, like, just going there, it's like, it feels so inappropriate to do anything but just take in the horror. So, like, even something like sitting down and having lunch, right? So I can't imagine what has to go through your mind to do that,
And there is some part of it that is, so, like, when I was in Austria, one of our mandatory field trips was to Dachau. So we went as a bunch of college students from America to Dachau. And I don't talk about this trip very often because it was really, really difficult. But I saw students from my school taking selfies in front of statues and in front of barracks. Like, there is a part of it that is just dumb, narcissistic American. There's another part of it that is, but there's the difference between that and just being a ditzy, dumb person.
Yeah.
And consciously deciding, knowing full well, because again, Hetalia attracted history nerds. They knew. This is a little bit different than the modern Attack on Titan fascism conversation, where a lot of this is dumb kids and they don't recognize all the fascism and they aren't aware and they just keep saying, "Oh, I wish Aaron Yeager was president," and it's like, no,
No, you don't.
you don't. You don't. Like, that's dumb kids. This is not. So there are multiple instances of Hetalia cosplayers being inappropriate at various sites, including there's a cancer memorial right outside of the Sheraton in Dallas where Anime Fest used to be held, and Hetalia cosplayers would often not be very appropriate in that cancer memorial.
Why am I not surprised?
Which leads us into one of my favorite conversations and something that I feel like, again, if someone told me this was a fever dream, I would believe you. There was this little group called DFW Hetalia. And DFW Hetalia was very, very close to Funimation. And they would use each other a lot for promos and materials. So anytime Funimation had an event for Hetalia, they would drag out DFW Hetalia and they'd get
Were
their
they like were they like a fan group, or was it like an official?
They were a fan group.
Okay.
They were a fan group canonized by Funimation.
Okay. What could possibly go wrong? If you are a listener only, you are missing out on some serious. I can't even call it side eye. Just
so much went wrong. So, Carola, you're an organizer, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why I said it like that. Like, she's going to talk about being an organizer.
No.
So, you know, when you are a panelist and you apply for a panel and you have co-panelists, this is probably a little bit different culturally, but back in the early days in the US, there didn't used to be caps on the amount of co-panelists that you could have.
Okay.
They were just so hungry for panelists that it's like, yeah, bring your entire fucking graduating class. It doesn't matter. We need panels. But now there's a cap on how many co-panelists you can have, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the big reasons that exists in the US is because of DFW Hetalia. DFW Hetalia would do these like big in character, I'm using big old air quotes, panels where it's just like them in their Hot Topic cosplay, answering questions in the most obvious answer. But they would have, so if they're on a big panel of, let's say, like, there's 5 characters in this panel, each one of those individual panelists got like 4 other co-panelists with them.
So there's like 20 people
that are not paying to go to this convention.
Okay. And they are just...
And they would spam the hell out of that.
But like, are they all sitting at the panel?
No.
Okay. So they're...
Deceiving, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking, because in my head, I was trying to imagine that everyone brought like a co-panelist, as in...
No.
There's like 20 people sitting at this panel, because my first question was, where do you even find room for all of these people? But yeah, no. Screams an organizer.
Yeah, so you would just pile on and be like, oh, well, I want to go to this con. Oh, well, you're helping.
Oh, yeah.
You're helping. So DFW Hetalia actually got a lot of conventions to change their policy on in-character panels, because as they progressed in age, they got really shitty at it. So it's one thing to be a good in-character panelist, and I love a good in-character panel. They weren't. And they were also taking up a ton of resources and packing convention schedules. So they would do an in-character panel, an in-character trivia, in-character chess, in-character this. So if you look at the schedule, it's 50% Hetalia.
Oh, yeah, that checks out. But what correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel like in-character panels are relatively new in the Norwegian con scene, and that is literally because we are so shy. It is so hard to get people to do anything. Like, we used to have, cosplay blind date. Like, that used to be a staple in very early Norwegian cons. But basically, people wanted the cons to do cosplay blind date, but then the organizers almost had to force people to participate because no one really wanted to be on stage. So it's only in recent years that people have started like emailing conventions here and being like, "Hey, we want to do an in character panel," because
Mm-hmm.
like we're just so socially inept in this country.
Mm-hmm.
But I had this idea, like, but I don't know if this is just something I got into my head, that in character panels were popularized by the Hetalia fandom in particular. Okay,
No.
because I feel like that was something.
I think it was easy to associate Hetalia with in character panels because again, giant fucking cast. Um, but no, cosplaying in character was very much a part of the early American con scene. I did a lot of in character cosplay, down to being offended if you didn't get my name right.
Yeah, no,
Like,
we had that too, but just like the
yeah,
panels, I feel like the
yeah,
Q&As, for instance, I feel like that
yeah.
was, so it didn't like become popularized with Hetalia.
It made like a second wave.
Okay, okay.
I'll say that. I'm not going to fully discredit it. Like it was the second wave of making this stuff popular. Uh, Assorted bad fan behavior.
You know, put a pin in that. I'm gonna let Sansa out. I am very
Okay.
curious about this next point because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Yes. Hello, it is just me. We're going to talk about some assorted bad fan behavior in just a minute. And I promise you, it is going to be more shocking than you could possibly imagine. Um, Good Lord, Hetalia had a rich history of being weird. Yay.
It's raining again.
Oh no. Welcome back.
Thank
How
you.
is Sansa?
Upset because he had waited like 5 minutes.
I finally heard him screaming yesterday.
Wasn't it great?
I was actually a little afraid.
It's an experience, and he does this every single time he comes in. It's so funny.
All right. So assorted bad fan behavior.
Yeah.
Where do you want
As
to...
if we haven't covered a lot of it, but yeah,
Oh, there was much groping from France cosplayers.
of course.
Um,
You gotta remember, this is before cosplay is not consent was invented.
yes. Yes. Which
Yeah.
doesn't make it okay,
No.
but there was much groping from France cosplayers. There were a lot of America cosplayers that liked guns too much.
Shocking.
I, And one of the worst brings us back to like yaoi paddle discourse,
Of course. Oh.
where Russia, who you can see right here, usually carries a very large pipe with him, and that pipe is used for many assorted activities.
Oh no.
There were many instances of bad pipe behavior at conventions.
Side note, if you were not in fandom spaces in the early 2000s, not only did we not have cosplays not consent yet, this was
We
the
also were
height.
just fucking, we were just beating people up.
Yeah, and this was at the height of free hugs. So it's like you'd either get free hugs or free beatings, I guess.
Yeah.
But also, the term surprise butt sex was
Yeah.
incredibly prominent. I can
With a
see where
pipe.
this is going. I can see you having war flashbacks. Are you okay? Do you?
I was
need
never
a moment?
piped. I was never piped, but I
You were
know
never
many,
piped.
but I know many people that were.
But you know, and you know what? You know, the thing is, in the outline, obviously we are the only two people seeing the outline. Like the
Yes.
outline only says, "Oh, the pipes," ellipsis. And me, as a person who, first of all, didn't have conventions back then, second of all, was never part of this. I have never known what Amanda has been referring to here. And now that you have presented me with it, what I am seeing in my mind's eye, which far less enjoyable than what you presented in my mind's eye yesterday of Austria getting debauched, is the Sennen Goroshi from Naruto, but just
But with a pipe.
with a pipe. Yeah. I hate it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Oh
That happened a
my.
lot.
How were the pipes even allowed in conventions?
So they weren't all real pipes,
Oh, okay.
but notice I said all.
I did notice, yes.
Notice I said they weren't all real pipes.
There's a part of my brain right now that is like, I need to go on our convention website and add no metal pipes to the rules of conduct and the weapon.
And you're gonna get a question. It's like, what the fuck is this for? You're just gonna have a screenshot of me disassociating.
Yeah, just like the whole bullet point is just a hyperlink to a picture of you dissociating. Like that is
But most of the pipes were prop pipes. Not all of them were prop pipes. But those pipes sure did go places.
okay.
Boku Hetalia.
I wanna cry. Spain, ¡Casquete creo! Colero. Oh
Ask at that.
no. Oh
It's such a cute series, and you would never think it would be so much sexual.
no! I mean, apart from the whole invading other countries thing, which honestly, we are both literature majors. We know what
invading means.
Yeah, we know the implications of,
Debauched Austria.
Oh god. Debauched Austria.
You enjoyed that too much yesterday.
I did! I'm still
You
thinking
enjoyed
about it.
Austria with his cravat tied around his wrists and his pants off way too much.
Oh my god. And he's just like,
You're disgusting.
yes, I am.
Degenerate. Filthy degenerate.
To any Austrians listening, I am talking about the humanoid character. I don't wish any ill will on your country. I quite like Austria, and I would like to go there.
I went because of Hetalia.
Of course, my main reason for going there is now defunct.
Hetalia.
No,
the energy drink. Yes.
The energy drink factory.
So we mentioned a lot of problematic elements.
Shout out to the people who locked their friends in a car for this road trip. How you all feeling?
Yep, trip check-in. How y'all doing? If you fast forward over the part about the pipes, I understand.
Remember to drink some water and yeah.
Yeah, it's a good time to go get a stretch break in. Oh.
Or run screaming into the nearest desert. I'm not blaming you.
Run screaming into the woods. So, for all of these horrible things that you said, why did and shockingly remains Hetalia become so popular? Well, the concept is brilliant. You make all of these country characters anime twinks, it's way easier to latch onto.
Yeah.
Scandinavia and the world had that problem by having a severe shonen deficiency.
Yeah.
So by making all these characters cute anime twinks, you really make it easy to latch onto. And considering how narrow the scope is, it has a huge cast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, again, like we said, we all have a stake in this because we're all from somewhere, or we all have
we're all from somewhere.
We're all from somewhere. We all have heritage. But yeah, but there are so many possibilities within fanon to explore not only like your own country or culture, but the
other cultures and other countries
and provinces and historical unions and like I mentioned briefly yesterday, there was a whole I was a member. A Swedish friend introduced me to a live journal community for Kalmarunion, the Kalmar Union, and I learned Nordic history that I didn't know of because of that. Because people were making OCs based on this particular part in Nordic history.
Yeah, absolutely. Each character has extensive lore because, again, they're personified countries, which includes birthdays, real names, and character songs. I don't know if you've noticed this, but a lot of us fans are neurodivergent. And if you give us extensive lore, we're going to study it. I know so many Hetalia character real names. I know birthdays, I know character songs, but that's the hallmark of a strong series. And you can stay entirely in your lane where you just listen to the characters and countries that you like. That's very rarely the case. So even if I didn't like this particular character, I still listened to his version of the opening song
Yeah.
just because I wanted to hear it.
Yeah. I remember
Like,
having, and I think I do still have it somewhere, but there was like a mashup where they like layered a bunch of the openings with the different characters like just on top of each other, and it's wild.
that sounds like neurodivergent hell. Um,
I was gonna say I'm not neurodivergent, but yes, I am. I just don't.
I was gonna say, you whore liar.
I mean, I am just not
Differently.
just differently. I can't even do that right, apparently. So there's
There was, as mentioned, a ton of contemporaneous merch. That was a
For you.
big deal. Oh, okay, listen. I'm sorry that you can reach up and touch the Arctic Circle. That's not my fault. I didn't do this.
surprisingly one thing you can't blame America for, I
The
guess.
literal one fucking thing. I was not. I had nothing to do with this. There was a ton of contemporaneous merch. We didn't have to wait 1,000 years to get our favorite character stuff from Japan. It was just there. The Japanese voice actors were amazing. Each one of them learned the language of their countries to be able to speak it properly for the series and for the songs. It is some of the best English I've heard in a long time. It's still not 100%, but it's damn good English. There are some great old panel videos of like the voice actors for France and England basically copping to the fact that they're married and this is an OTP.
You know,
Yes.
there is when you said that, there is a flame of jealousy that just rises in my chest because Nontam is Sasuke and he doesn't get to be involved in any other OTPs. I will fucking gatekeep the house.
That's why he went so ham on England. It's because he couldn't do it when he was Sasuke.
Oh,
You know, the voice acting was great. We're not going to talk about the English dub because it was terrible.
we do have a note on it later in the outline, and
We do.
I have some notes because I have some questions. We'll get there.
We will. The goddamn shipping.
Yes.
Listen, because it's history, you can make a case for anyone being together, and you're not wrong. So if you really, really want to have France and Austria get it on, they probably did.
Yep.
Conquering. Invasion. Trade deal. Exploratory journey.
Oh. Yes.
There was so much shipping in Hetalia. And like most great series, no answer was incorrect. I might be a hardcore France UK shipper, but people who ship US UK also aren't wrong. People who ship the America twins, Canada and America together, that's not wrong.
And again, like we briefly touched upon yesterday when we did the Patreon episode,
Mm-hmm.
you know, today's fandom could never, and it's like the amount of quote unquote incest, because yeah, the America twins and England and the US and I have a genuine concern that this would be the deal breaker for a lot of people. Like, not all of the other stuff, not all the colonizing and the Nazis.
If the incest is what's the deal breaker and not the fucking Nazi shit, I'm walking into my own grave.
I'm joining you. I'm coming with you. I just genuinely think that it's a
We're both
possibility.
going into the pyramid.
Yeah, we're both going
And
into the
just,
pyramid. You still don't have to build it. It's fine.
thank you.
We'll- but it's like it's just there were so many good things, you know.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, like this is one of those cases where there literally are no wrong answers
No.
because there have been, okay, invasions and
Mm-hmm.
colonizing, but like there have been unions, there have been
Mm-hmm.
cooperations and
Mm-hmm.
special relationships and
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of things between a lot of these nations. So basically the world is literally your oyster. Ship as you will. And like
Right.
it was absolute pandemonium in a positive way. Like,
That was, yeah, it was one of the few positives.
yeah,
The music was fantastic. We
yes.
all have our favorite versions of the opening song Marukai Techikyu from Axis Powers Italia. It literally became another song and no one else liked it. But we all have our favorite versions of the opening and closing songs. We all have our favorite character songs. We talked about some of those in our Patreon episode.
You know which one I
There's
did mention,
which
which
one?
I also still listen to? I love World Ondo. Wawa World Ondo.
I
It's
do
one of
not
my
like World Endo.
absolute favorites
I do
because
not like
I
World Endo.
I love Japanese festival music. I
No,
live for that
I
song.
don't like it. I was listening to the Holy Roman Empire's version of Madokai Techikyu, and I was so sad because he's just asking for Chibitalia, and he's just sad
Oh
and
no.
talking about how much he likes Chibitalia.
Ugh. And then another good thing, that was kind of like soul healing. The Nekotalia
I
extras
love
when they
Neko.
were all cats.
Nekotalia was so good.
Nekotalia.
Madro, madro, mite. Yeah. I, Nekotalia was so good.
And there was no Taliban.
No.
Sorry.
How did things? So now that we've come full circle, and it's been an hour and a half,
Well, we've
how did
drawn the circle. Marukai, the
thank
chikyu. Yeah.
you? That's the thing that gets us demonetized. It's the copyrighting music. It's not.
スペインやろう助けてくれよ in case anyone wonders what my favorite character song is.
It's also one of my favorites.
Oh my god, it's so funny. I love it so much.
I, for whatever reason, I have this image of me finally visiting Carola in Norway and just singing the delicious tomato song together.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So how did things go wrong? Well, let's start with the absolute dumpster fire that was the American dub. The American dub was trash.
Hello! Raising my hand! Because
Yeah.
I was literally 1 month ago today, years old,
Yes.
when I learned that the American dub was basically like ghost stories in the sense
Yes.
that it was a completely different thing. I didn't know
Yes.
this.
Yes.
What? Because
So
when I was doing my research, I kept coming
Mhm.
across so many like Reddit threads and things where people were like, I don't understand why anyone isn't watching the American dub because it's hard to translate a lot of the gags from Japanese to English, right? So
Mhm.
they basically just redubbed it and like made new for new
Jokes.
context. I had no
Yes.
idea. And it looks like a lot of people really enjoyed it, but I'm just over here like big question mark. Like, what do you mean they just made their own version? Which made me think that could lead to a whole slew of new problems, can it?
Oh, it did.
Oh, of course it did. Okay.
Oh, it did. So we had to talk about Germany's dog porn.
Oh, what?
There is a scene where England captures Italy and Germany. And Germany, of course, is like, I'm not going to give up any information. I will die with the info that I have. Italy immediately gives up the ghost.
Of course.
And he throws out a line that says, I've seen all the weird books that Germany has. One of them even involved dogs.
Is this in the dub?
This is in the sub.
Okay.
The dub, because it's produced by Funimation, which is a Texan company, that is important to keep in mind. Funimation is a Texan company that no longer exists, erased a lot of that.
Okay.
They cut a lot of those jokes and references. Now, if you are an old fashioned weeb like I am, even though that joke is abhorrent, that joke is there. And cutting it out is not acceptable. So a lot of younger fans really liked the dub because it sanitized Hetalia. It
Mm.
made Hetalia what it always should have been. Older fans hate the dub because Funimation did what Funimation does, which is localize it to hell.
Mm.
Also, the voice acting is just off. Like, it's some decent American voice actors, and all of them are just clearly having a bad time. Like, all of them are clearly just like having like a gun held to their heads and like being forced to read these lines.
Considering Funimation is based in Texas, that sounds. I'm sorry, that was insensitive, and I am. This is now rubbing off on me, and now I'm just stereotyping the hell out of.
Yeah, like everyone just sounds like their dick is in a box and they don't want to be here. They
Yeah.
also did the weird choice of, so no one really has accents in Hetalia in the sub. They have different vocal patterns and vocal tics, but no one really has accents. The dub decided that everyone needs to have very stereotypical accents.
Oh yeah, like that. Because what I recently learned, like,
Mm-hmm.
sorry for to interrupt you, but we did talk about this in Patreon because my favorite Poland
Yes.
speaks with a Nagoya accent
Yes.
in Japanese. And I recently learned because, like I said, I went back and looked at the clips with the Nordics, and
Mm-hmm.
now that I understand Japanese in a way that I absolutely
Mm-hmm.
didn't do back when it first came out, when I heard Norway speaking, I was like, why the fuck does he speak like that? And apparently Norway speaks in let's see, what was it, just so I don't butcher it. He speaks in a Tsugaru accent. So
Mm-hmm.
Tsugaru is in like Aomori, I think. And I was like, why that accent specifically? So in the Japanese dub, they do have accents as in Japanese accents, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
have like the stereotypical like the French
Yeah,
accent or
and in
the
the
yeah.
US they do, and it ends up
Mm.
where Germany sounds like fucking Gru from Despicable Me. Like they all just sound terrible. Like they all sound bad. But again, younger fans came into that and they're dumb as rocks and were like, "This is." They are.
I'm not gonna argue.
They're dumb as rocks, and it's like, "Oh yeah, a dumb show about country should sound like this," and it's like, "No, you idiot. We had Messiah on Osaka."
But wouldn't that make it worse? Just when we're on the topic of stereotyping and insensitivity, isn't that
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Also, just time. Fans have been discussing the problematic and Nazi elements for years. Again, that's one thing that I feel like a lot of new discourse doesn't bring up is that we've been having these conversations for years. And I'm
yeah.
going to go ahead and say it. A lot of the fans of color have been saying this stuff for years because we wouldn't participate in a lot of these outfits and meetups and stuff like that because it felt uncomfortable. Even if we didn't have words to express it back then, I felt a visceral discomfort being around a bunch of Germanys and Prussias. I wonder why.
Can't even begin to imagine what could be.
Yeah, as a black queer fan,
I
I
don't know.
wonder why I didn't feel a lot of comfort, especially when a lot of these fans aren't actually German. They're just Americans that took the joke too far.
Yeah, and
I
I
wonder
think
why. Yes.
and I think that a lot of the time people, the wrong kinds of people will get in on things like this
Yes.
to use it as an excuse.
Yes.
And yeah, and I'm not saying that that was the majority of fans, but I definitely
No.
can see how that would happen.
It
Because
did.
then you
It
could be
did.
like, well, no, but I'm just being, like how and we talk about this with a lot of other types of cosplay as well, where it's
Mhm.
like you are cosplaying as someone who is a known asshole, or you are like Deadpool, right? And
Mhm. Ugh.
people like to be like, oh, but I'm just being a
Ugh.
character. Yeah, no, you can.
No,
Speaking for all organizers, please don't.
as someone who has been thoroughly annoyed at the hands of Deadpool cosplayers, please don't. But yeah, like you would get, especially a lot of these. So, like again, I live in Texas that has a huge German population, and a lot of the Germans that live here now, let's say they're a little bit too proud of being German. So it's making, so that's discourse that we've been having for years.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't look like that, it doesn't sound like that, because a lot of us were told to be quiet, or we're being sensitive, or you're overthinking. So I know it doesn't look like we've been having this discourse for years. We have, I
Yeah.
promise.
And another thing that I think is important to point out is that, again, the social internet is different. So a
It
lot of
is.
these conversations were happening in either like private communities where you had to be,
Mm-hmm.
invited, or let
Mm-hmm.
in like live journal communities, or just in private chats and discussions
Mm-hmm.
between friend groups, because Twitter didn't exist. Like, it wasn't like now where everything is a big open conversation, and
Mm-hmm.
basically you need to go out and make a statement or something on something, or else you will automatically be assumed to be
Mm-hmm.
on the wrong side of things, like in a lot of cases. So it's just because you can't see traces of that discourse and
Doesn't
those
mean it wasn't
discussions, doesn't
there.
mean it wasn't there. Like, a lot of these
Right.
sites that we were using don't even exist anymore, for
Right.
one. So
Exactly.
yeah, and
So
like yeah, and like
yeah,
I said, these were like the first thoughts that came to me when I was introduced to it. So clearly we were having these talks.
we've been having these conversations for years. And again, like as Carola mentioned, a lot of this stuff is just lost media at this
Yeah.
stage. I can see why younger fans, when discussing Hetalia, assume that we were all just complicit. That we were all just like, it's fine, let them go do Nazi shit. We weren't. We weren't okay with it. And like most movements, it was a lot of the black and brown fans that had a problem first. It was a lot of the black and brown fans that were doing their best to fix certain representations of certain characters. It was that part of the vanguard that, of course, got overshadowed by white fans showing their whole ass. It also didn't help that newer versions of Italia, like World Star, just weren't able to capture the same magic. And
Yeah,
that's,
I think World Star was the last season I tried to watch, and I got like
yeah,
halfway through it and then I fell off.
yeah. It's
What about
fine.
World Twinkle?
It might have been World Twinkle. World
Yeah.
Twinkle, I don't like at all. But like, it just never captured the same magic. It was lightning in a bottle. You could not and you cannot redo what Hitalia did. And I think by the time that like World Star and World Twinkle came out, those conversations that the fandom had been having for a long time started bubbling up. It was really
Mm.
a fandom that cannibalized itself. Again, we've been having these conversations from the start, and by the time you get to the part of the series where it's just not as good and not as compelling, it makes it easier for all those conversations to rise to the top.
Mm.
And that's what happened.
Yeah.
Um,
I say that as if I wasn't there. I wasn't, but
but
I
I was there.
know.
I was there. Um, so the spark was gone. It was easy to neg this stuff. And I think also because, and I will say this having been there, because this was a very female led fandom, it was easy to neg it. It was
Mm.
easy to be like, look at these dumb girls. When they get together, they just do weird Nazi shit. And it was one of those fandoms that was very, very easy to make fun of.
Yeah, and I want to tap into that with
Yes.
one of the articles I looked at today, which unfortunately wasn't the whole thing. I think it was one of those, you know, other people
Mm-hmm.
assessing someone else's paper, because I couldn't get the full. But there
Mm-hmm.
was an Italian academic who wrote a paper on Hetalia, and pointing out that particularly in the Italian communities, it seems like
Mm-hmm.
that one of another reason why the Hetalia fandom was looked down upon was again not only the misogyny of just negging
Mm-hmm.
what women are into, but because they were also fujin. So not
Yes.
only is it, so then you get the double ammo of, oh, not only
Mm-hmm.
are you disgusting fetishizing fujos, which
Mm-hmm.
wasn't necessarily the words that were being used back then, but on top of that, you're Nazis. Like that
Yeah.
is, yeah,
Which is a powerful thing to be dealt with. Um, but yeah, you got a lot of that. Now our final point. Wait, I thought this was the Yaoi Shelf. Is this gay?
2 hours in, is this gay?
Yes.
Would we be talking about it if
If
it
this was
wasn't
not gay.
inherently gay?
And not just on the fandom side, because the fandom side can make anything gay.
Yeah,
Again, because a lot of this is rooted in history, these countries do all have a history together. There
yeah,
is a reason why France and England are associated to be an old married couple. There is a
yeah.
reason why Austria has so many contentious relationships with other countries. There are reasons why all of this has happened.
Sweden referring to Finland canonically as his wife.
My wife.
Yeah. And again, my beloved Lietpol, Lithuania and Poland, my OTP.
I'm sorry, Lithuania deserves so much better.
I know, but I also love Poland and his, and like, and again, and like I said, like I think Poland was part of the reason why I finally ended up to kind of enjoying it a lot more, because Poland
Yes.
is the gayest thing that's ever happened. Like he is flamboyant. His favorite word is fabulous. He is a cross-dresser. He is in this relationship thing with Lithuania. I love him. He's been subbed in a Valley Girl accent. He's everything to me.
Me with France.
I love that little homosexual.
I love that old whore. I don't have a type. Don't worry about it.
No, no,
Oh,
no, 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 not at all.
I love that old whore. Oh, but
No
also
types here.
no times here. Hetalia also just had like a genuine lack of women. There were a few. There's
Hungary,
Miss
my love.
Hungary, my love. There's Miss Ukraine, who has giant breasts that make a boing boing sound.
All right.
There's Miss Belarus, who wants to pipe Russia, which, okay.
Hmm.
There's Miss Seychelles, who really only existed to make fans angry. And Miss Hungary, who is canonically divorced from Austria, even though she lives in his house still as a maid, which we don't have time to talk about the gender politics of that. That's why we have a live stream.
I think that's going to be fun. I hope that people bring their own perspective.
Experiences.
Yeah,
Yes.
and like as citizens of various countries, I want to hear what everyone has to say.
Yes. Yes. Now, after almost 2 hours, is Italia worth a watch? Honestly, I think so. I think the original series and the manga are worth it just for the nostalgia. But please keep all the tags in mind. Please keep what we said in mind.
Mm.
And I think, in our listeners, I'm very, very fortunate that our listeners, I don't feel like we have to say this, but consume critically. Just because I enjoy Hetalia and I like Hetalia doesn't mean that I'm not unaware of the problems. 2 hours of conversation. I can still say that I like it, even knowing all of the issues. And it changed how I interact with the fandom. So I stay in my little corner with the characters I like, and I don't really leave.
Yeah. Which, good approach.
Carola, would you like to explain yours?
Yeah, having delved into this over the past few weeks and like talking about it now, I definitely have this urge to kind of like pick it back up and read it and watch it now as the person I am now, just for the experience, just to see, because clearly I don't have it as fresh in mind as you do. I would love to kind of like just go back in and look at it with new eyes. I think I think that the fandom at this point is so notorious. I understand if people will be like just squick just thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that, and like you said, I think that absolutely consume critically. Like, sure, you can, like, by all means, look at the silly gags and the cute
Hmm.
character designs and the catchy songs, because the catchy songs, but it's like definitely just balance it out, like keep the critical
Yeah,
things in mind
yeah,
as you enjoy it. And like again,
yeah.
like we say all the time on this show, like there's nothing wrong with just superficially enjoying something in the moment.
Hmm.
It is what you do beyond that, and what you know, what you bring. Like, don't go out and cosplay Nazis, like basically,
Well, and
or
I
like
think,
no.
yeah, I think that's what makes Hetalia so interesting is that this was very analogous to Harry Potter, a series that fans instinctively saw issues
Mm.
and worked hard to fix as it was happening.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's one of those fandoms that is
Yeah.
on par with Harry Potter when it comes to
Yes.
like how fan driven it is.
Yes.
And I think that like
Absolutely.
there's just so much potential there, and I can absolutely see, you know, the attraction to it. I don't think it's bad. It was, I think, again, I would like to revisit it, because when I first read it and watched it, it wasn't really for me. I think maybe
Hmm.
now it would be an interesting rediscovery.
And yeah, and I think, consume it critically. If you see a reference where it's like, oh, they talk about this historical event, go research that historical
Yeah,
event. Did they
exactly.
mention this king or queen? Go look them up. Like, don't, yeah, please don't like write a paper and use Hetalia as your primary source.
Screams.
Screams. But I still think it's worth a watch
Mm.
just for the nostalgia. And then also to understand, I think one thing that annoys me the most about modern fans critiquing Hetalia is not looking at it and questioning how we got here. Because I think once you watch it, it's pretty easy to see how we got to where we are now.
Mm.
It's written all over the walls. Like, it's easy to see how we got here. But I think you need to engage with it a little bit to understand. Like, it's so easy to sit on the sidelines and condemn. And like,
Mm.
I've mentioned this, and I have this with gravitation as well. Like, I get a little defensive watching modern fans really tear Hetalia down. And it's like, I'm not disagreeing with you, but also you weren't there.
Exactly. Like you weren't there. And again, like, you know, I talk so much about fandom history and like
Mm-hmm.
knowing your history. And the only way to know your history is to
Just
delve
to
into it.
study. Yeah.
Like if you're gonna understand, you know, how, I mean, obviously you will never be able to fully understand what the fandoms were like because you weren't there. Like if you are
Mm-hmm.
15 years old today, you can't imagine what our lives at 15 looked
No.
like fandom wise, but you can go back and watch those shows and read that manga and understand the material.
And talk to older fans who were there. Most of us are just sitting out on the porch, ready to tell our stories because we're all
uh,
approaching death. Most,
Rapidly.
yeah, most of us are just sitting out there, with our cats on the porch in our rocking chairs. I would love it if younger fans came to be like, so what the fuck was Hetalia? I would
Mm.
love that. I would love that so much more than just them having these like pseudo think pieces on TikTok. Fucking ask me. Ask me what it was like to be there. Ask me what it was like. Go ask other people what it was like. Just instead of popping off and doing your little video essay, we're not dead. Like we always talk about like how
Yeah, we're like
important
we're
fandom
right here.
elders. Like we always talk about how important fandom elders are. We're right fucking here. I read a Hetalia fic a few years ago. We're still here. Ask
Yep.
us. Ask us. Worst case scenario is we say, I don't want to go back to the mines. And we don't talk
I've
we
done
don't
my time. I'm not
I've
going back
done my
there.
time in Azkaban.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario is you get that one super traumatized fan who's like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Ask us. We're still here.
Yeah.
Most of us have a lot to say because we weren't listened to 15 years ago when we were like, hey, maybe we should do less Nazi stuff. And it's like, no, it's our heritage. It's like,
And then apparently the world didn't understand, and it went, no, we want to do more Nazi and
we
fascism
want
stuff,
to we want to
actually.
do more Nazism. Mm.
Now look at us.
Uh, this is
I
the part
hate
of the
it.
show. Yeah, it's
When
been
we
2 hours.
dissociate? Yeah.
Yeah, this is the part of the show where we disassociate. One and two. This is the part of the show where we thank our
Thank you,
patrons.
patrons.
Let's see. We start off with Dobie80, Koval, Sue, Lucy H, Amora Blue, Nabila, Rin, Wesley, Jamie, Lauren, and Jay. Thank you so much for supporting
Thank
the show.
you.
We greatly appreciate you. Thank you for helping us celebrate our birth month. As mentioned at the top of the show, I'm actually doing some traveling this month,
Woo!
including a live action convention appearance. I will be at Anime Fest
Woo!
July 25th through the 28th. I will keep you guys posted. So if you ever want to see me panel and wonder how I got to this, you are welcome to come shout out and say hello. I look forward to seeing you guys in person. If you'd like to come see me in person without Carola, and I understand I'm probably much less interesting without Carola.
No, you're not. Stop it.
You're such a Sindiri.
You're not, though. I have nothing. I bring nothing.
You bring so much to this. Why do you think I asked you to be here?
Arranged marriage.
Nordic confusion.
Invasion. Because basically Kazakhstan gave me to you on a silver platter like Poland gave Lithuania away to Russia.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make the controversial and brave statement. I treat you better than Russia.
Yeah.
I treat you better than Russia treats Lithuania.
Yeah.
Is that,
yeah,
is that a fair? I don't mean to be self-aggrandizing, but I think I treat you better than Russia treated Lithuania.
Okay, yeah, I will give you that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, fine. Just because it's your birthday in 4 days.
And it's France's birthday today.
Yeah, happy Bastille Day. Please go out and guillotine some rich people. This is why we're demonetized. This is... Thank you again, patrons. You are making things a lot easier. Cause,
absolutely, because we... We'll avoid this episode. If you'd like to join the hollowed ranks of our patrons, you can do so at patreon.com/the Yaoi Shelf. Again, that is patreon.com/the Yaoi Shelf. Remember to follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Blue Sky, and check out our Discord. Your engagement helps us out a lot, so please feel free to leave a comment or a like and share. We love reading your comments.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think
give us a review if you can.
Yeah, give us a review if you can. We have a pretty solid rating on both Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, which we greatly appreciate. But yeah, drop us a review. There was one comment that almost made me cry, which was, this podcast gives me very cozy vibes. It's like a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
oh, thank you. I was also like, I am slightly concerned if you think we are cozy, but thank you.
Yes, we talk about a lot of murder and stuff, but also, yes, that is exactly what we always wanted it to be, was like a conversation between friends.
Yeah.
And the conversation never ends. Drop us a comment, hang out with us in Discord, shout at us on Twitter lovingly. But thank you all so much for listening. Carola, what are we doing next month?
We are doing a lot next month. Screams in Con Organizer. If you want to see me in the flesh and you're in Norway, please come to TudoCon on the second weekend of August, where I will be running around organizing. Other than that, we are going to be celebrating CitrusCon. We're going to be at CitrusCon for our live. Yeah. And the theme for August is the BL convention scene.
We're going to talk about the BL con scene. You know, it's a bit contentious. There was some stuff that happened.
Yeah, some stuff that happened here too, actually.
There's more yaoi paddle discourse.
Oh, God. Does it ever end?
I think every episode is just yaoi paddle discourse. That's the third host of the show, is yaoi paddle discourse.
Yeah, that's true.
They're just in the back, making everything difficult.
Just always there.
Just always there. I'm just imagining as like a ghostly yaoi paddle, just like floating between
Oh
us,
my god.
like the Funky Phantom.
Yeah.
Do you know the Funky Phantom?
I believe I do, yes.
We're not going to talk about the Funky Phantom right now because I'm old. But I'm excited to be at something. I'm excited to be at CitrusCon. I also have another live in person convention in August as well because I decided to have a life this summer.
Yes. Look at
Carola
you
is very
go.
proud of me. I've been
Yeah,
resting. I've been doing things that aren't this show.
I'm very proud. I
Thank
think that you should do things like this
more
more.
often.
Yeah.
Yes. Uh, but thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for being a part of our birthday celebration.
Thank
And
you.
I can't wait to see you guys in the live where we
Woo.
talk about all of this a little bit more. So, with all that being said, we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.